The fluorescent lights in Building 24 cast long shadows across the empty corridors at 2:17 a.m. Dr. Patricia Chen, Dean of the Physics Department at MIT, had forgotten her reading glasses in the quantum mechanics lab after a grueling 14-hour day of budget meetings and faculty reviews. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. She moved quietly through the hallway, her footsteps echoing against the polished floors, when she noticed something that made her pause. A faint glow emanated from beneath the door of Laboratory 6, and the soft scratch of chalk against blackboard drifted into the silence. Security protocols were clear. No undergraduate access after midnight without supervision, no graduate students in the advanced quantum lab without prior authorization. Yet someone was inside, working with an intensity that seemed to vibrate through the walls themselves. Dr. Chen approached the door slowly, her hand hovering over her security badge, when she heard something that stopped her breath entirely. The sound of equations being spoken aloud, not read from a textbook, but derived in real time, each step building upon the last, with a fluidity that spoke of true understanding. She pressed her ear closer to the door and heard a voice, young and male, working through what sounded like a quantum entanglement problem that had stumped her graduate students for weeks. The voice carried no uncertainty, no hesitation, just the steady rhythm of a mind that had found its natural language in the mathematics of the universe. Dr. Chen's finger trembled as she swiped her badge, the lock clicking open with a soft mechanical whisper. The young man at the blackboard didn't notice her entrance immediately. He stood with his back to the door, wearing a faded denim jacket over a worn grey t-shirt, his dark hair falling across his forehead as he worked. The board before him was covered in equations that seemed to dance and flow like living things, each symbol perfectly placed, each derivation following logical steps that Dr. Chen recognized as both advanced and elegant. This wasn't the work of someone copying from a textbook or following predetermined formulas. This was original thinking, the kind that emerged when a mind grappled directly with the fundamental questions of reality. Marcus Rodriguez had been working in this lab for 3 months, always after midnight, always alone. He had discovered the security flaw by accident, a glitch in the card reader system that allowed entry for exactly 47 seconds after the night janitor's access expired. It wasn't breaking and entering, he told himself. It was borrowing time from a universe that had never given him any to begin with. He worked as a dishwasher at Sal's Diner 6 blocks from campus, pulling double shifts to pay rent on a studio, apartment that barely qualified as habitable. His official relationship with MIT had ended 2 years ago when financial aid ran out and academic probation caught up with unpaid tuition bills. The equations on the board represented months of thinking, of working through problems that haunted his dreams and occupied every spare moment between washing dishes and restocking napkin dispensers. Marcus had been teaching himself quantum mechanics through borrowed textbooks and online lectures, but the real breakthroughs came in the quiet hours when he could think without interruption, when the weight of survival didn't press down on his shoulders with quite so much force. Tonight, he was close to something significant, a new approach to quantum decoherence that could revolutionize how physicists understood the collapse of wave functions. Dr. Chen watched him work for several minutes, her trained eye following his mathematical reasoning with growing amazement. She had spent 23 years in academia, had published over 60 papers in peer-reviewed journals, had supervised doctoral dissertations that went on to win prestigious awards. She knew brilliance when she saw it, and what she was witnessing went beyond mere talent or even genius. This young man was thinking about quantum mechanics in ways that hadn't occurred to her most advanced researchers. Marcus finally sensed her presence and turned around, his marker still raised toward the board. His face went pale, his eyes widening, with the unmistakable expression of someone caught in an act that could have serious consequences. He started to lower the marker, started to step away from the board, started to formulate an apology that might somehow minimize the trouble he was clearly in. Dr. Chen raised her hand gently, her voice soft but clear when she spoke. She asked him who he was, her tone carrying no accusation, only curiosity. Marcus hesitated, his throat dry, his mind racing through possible explanations that might make this situation less catastrophic than it appeared. He could lie, give a false name, claim to be a graduate student who had gotten permission he didn't actually have. He could run, push past her, and disappear into the night, never to return to this lab that had become his sanctuary. Instead, he told her the truth, his voice barely above a whisper as he explained that his name was Marcus Rodriguez, that he had been a student until financial circumstances forced him to drop out, that he had been using the lab without permission to continue learning on his own. Dr. Chen nodded slowly, her gaze moving from Marcus to the blackboard and back again. She asked him about the equations, about the approach he was taking to the decoherence problem, about the mathematical techniques he was employing. Marcus answered her questions, his nervousness gradually giving way to excitement as he realized she was genuinely interested in his work rather than simply processing a security violation. He walked her through his reasoning, explaining how he had identified what he believed to be a fundamental oversight in current quantum decoherence models. As Marcus spoke, Dr. Chen felt something she hadn't experienced in years: the pure joy of discovery, the electric thrill of encountering an idea that shifted her understanding of the world in some small but meaningful way. This dropout, this dishwasher who snuck into her lab in the dead of night, was proposing modifications to quantum theory that her entire department should have been exploring. She found herself asking follow-up questions, challenging his assumptions, engaging with his ideas as she would with any respected colleague. The conversation continued for over an hour, ranging across topics from Bell's theorem to the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. Marcus demonstrated not just knowledge but insight, not just understanding but intuition about the deeper patterns that governed quantum systems. Dr. Chen realized that she was talking to someone who had developed their own unique perspective on quantum mechanics, someone who had arrived at profound insights through pure intellectual curiosity and determination. When Marcus finally ran out of chalk and stepped back from the board, Dr. Chen stood quietly for a long moment, processing what she had witnessed. She looked at this young man in his faded jacket and worn shoes, this person who had been invisible to the academic world, despite possessing one of the most promising minds she had encountered in decades. She thought about the faculty meetings where professors complained about the declining quality of graduate students, about the funding committees that debated which research projects deserved support, about the institutional barriers that determined who gained access to advanced education and who remained locked out. Marcus waited for her verdict, uncertain whether he should prepare for consequences or dare to hope for something else entirely. Dr. Chen asked him how long he had been working on these problems, how he had taught himself the advanced mathematics required to tackle quantum mechanics at this level, what his goals were for this research. Marcus explained that he had been studying physics since high school, that he had always been drawn to the fundamental questions about reality and consciousness, that dropping out of MIT had felt like losing access to his life's purpose. Dr. Chen made a decision that would change both of their lives. She asked Marcus if he would be interested in continuing his research, not as a trespasser in her lab, but as a legitimate member of her research team. She explained that the university had programs for exceptional cases, pathways for non-traditional Students who demonstrated extraordinary ability. Marcus stared at her, struggling to process what seemed too good to be true, too perfect to be real. She told him that his work on quantum decoherence was publishable, that it represented a genuine contribution to the field, that she would be honored to serve as his advisor if he was willing to return to academic life. Marcus felt tears gathering. In his eyes, emotions he had kept buried for 2 years, suddenly rising to the surface. He had never imagined that someone would see past his circumstances to recognize his potential, that his midnight sessions with borrowed chalk and bootleg access would lead to anything more than personal satisfaction. Dr. Chen gave Marcus her business card and asked him to meet her in her office the next morning. She promised that they would discuss the practical details of his return to MIT, the financial aid applications and academic probation appeals that would need to be addressed. But more importantly, she wanted to explore his research ideas further, to understand the full scope of his insights into quantum mechanics. As she prepared to leave the lab, she turned back to him one more time. She told Marcus that brilliance often emerged from unexpected places, that some of the most important discoveries in physics had come from people who approached problems from unconventional angles. She said that his perspective, shaped by struggle and isolation, might be exactly what the field needed to make the next breakthrough in understanding quantum systems. Marcus nodded, still overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening, still afraid to believe that his life was about to change in ways he had never dared to imagine. As Dr. Chen walked back through the empty corridors of Building 24, she reflected on the randomness of discovery, on how easily Marcus might have remained invisible if she hadn't forgotten her reading glasses, if she hadn't decided to retrieve them at precisely 2:17 a.m. She thought about all the other brilliant minds that might be working in secret, teaching themselves advanced concepts, making breakthroughs that would never be recognized because they lacked access to proper channels and institutional support. Marcus remained in the lab until sunrise, staring at the equations he had written, trying to convince himself that the conversation with Dr. Chen had actually happened. He had spent so many nights in this room, working through problems with no audience except his own curiosity, no validation except the internal satisfaction of understanding. The possibility that his work might matter to someone else, that it might contribute to humanity's understanding of the universe, felt almost too powerful to contemplate. When the morning shift arrived and other researchers began filtering into the building, Marcus finally gathered his notebooks and left through the same door where Dr. Chen had found him hours earlier. He walked through the campus that had once felt like home, past the dormitories where he used to live, past the lecture halls where he used to attend classes, past the library where he used to study until closing time. Everything looked the same. But something fundamental had shifted in his relationship to this place. At Sal's diner, Marcus went through the motions of his dishwashing shift, his mind still processing the previous night's events. His co-workers noticed his distraction, but attributed it to fatigue, unaware that the quiet young man scraping plates and loading the industrial washer had just been offered a chance to return to the academic world he'd been forced to abandon. Marcus kept Dr. Chen's business card in his shirt pocket, touching it occasionally to reassure himself that it was real, that the opportunity she had described wasn't just an elaborate dream his exhausted mind had constructed. The morning meeting. In Dr. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Chen's office would determine whether Marcus's midnight discoveries would remain a beautiful secret or become the foundation for a new chapter in his life. As he worked through his shift, Marcus allowed himself to imagine possibilities he had given up years ago. Perhaps he would publish papers, attend conferences, contribute to the ongoing conversation about the nature of reality that had captivated him since childhood. Perhaps his insights into quantum decoherence would inspire other researchers to explore new directions in their own work. But first, he would have to navigate the complex institutional machinery that determined who belonged in academic spaces and who remained outside looking in. Marcus had learned not to trust in outcomes beyond his control, but something about Dr. Chen's response to his work gave him reason to hope that merit might sometimes overcome circumstance, that brilliance might occasionally be recognized regardless of its humble origins. Marcus arrived at Dr. Chen's office 15 minutes early, his hands trembling slightly as he knocked on the heavy oak door. The hallway outside her office smelled of fresh coffee and old books, a combination that reminded him of the mornings when he used to attend Professor Williams' advanced physics seminars before everything fell apart. Dr. Chen opened the door with a warm smile, gesturing him inside to a space that felt more like a cozy library than a sterile academic office. Bookshelves lined every wall from floor to ceiling, filled with physics journals, theoretical treatises, and what appeared to be several decades' worth of research notes. A large window overlooked the campus quad, where early morning joggers traced paths between buildings that house some of the world's most advanced scientific research. Dr. Chen offered Marcus coffee from a small machine tucked into the corner, her manner relaxed and welcoming despite the formal nature of their meeting. As they settled into chairs across from her desk, Dr. Chen began explaining the practical realities of Marcus's situation. His academic record showed promise in his freshman and sophomore years, but financial difficulties had led to incomplete courses and eventually withdrawal from the university. The standard readmission process would require him to reapply as a transfer student, complete outstanding coursework, and demonstrate financial stability before being considered for enrollment in graduate-level physics courses. Marcus listened carefully, his initial optimism tempered by the bureaucratic obstacles that lay ahead. He had experienced these institutional barriers before, the maze of forms and requirements that seemed designed to filter out students who didn't fit traditional academic pathways. Dr. Chen seemed to sense his growing discouragement and leaned forward, her expression growing more determined as she outlined an alternative approach to his readmission. She explained that MIT had recently established the Exceptional Scholar Initiative, a program designed to recognize and support individuals who demonstrated extraordinary ability outside conventional academic structures. The program allowed for accelerated pathways to graduate study, provided financial support for students facing economic hardship, and offered research opportunities that could begin immediately rather than after years of prerequisite coursework. Marcus had never heard of this initiative, largely because it was still in its pilot phase and had only accepted 3 students since its inception. Dr. Chen pulled out a thick folder containing application materials for the Exceptional Scholar Initiative, explaining that Marcus's work on quantum decoherence theory provided exactly the kind of evidence the program required. His midnight research sessions, while technically unauthorized, had produced insights that demonstrated both theoretical understanding and original thinking. She believed his application would be competitive, especially with her endorsement as a faculty sponsor. The application process itself was unconventional, focusing more on demonstrated ability than traditional academic credentials. Rather than submitting transcripts and standardized test scores, candidates were asked to present original research, undergo intensive interviews with faculty committees, and complete practical examinations that tested their grasp of advanced concepts. Dr. Chen estimated that the entire process could be completed within 6 weeks, potentially allowing Marcus to begin graduate coursework in the spring semester. Marcus felt a surge of hope as Dr. Chen described the program's structure and requirements. This pathway seemed designed for people like him, individuals who had acquired knowledge and skills through non-traditional means but possessed the intellectual capacity to contribute meaningfully to academic research. He asked about the financial support component, explaining that his current employment at Sal's Diner was essential for covering basic living expenses. Dr. Chen assured him that the Exceptional Scholar Initiative provided comprehensive support, including tuition coverage, a modest stipend for living expenses, and access to research assistant positions that could supplement his income. The program recognized that financial stability was essential for academic success, particularly for students who lacked family resources or traditional support networks. Marcus would be able to resign from the diner and focus entirely on his studies and research. As they discussed the specifics of the application process, Dr. Chen shared more details about her own research group and the projects that Marcus might join. Her team was investigating quantum coherence in biological systems, exploring how quantum mechanical effects might play a role in processes like photosynthesis and neural computation. Marcus's insights into decoherence theory could provide valuable perspectives on these questions, potentially opening new directions for investigation. The conversation shifted to Marcus's background and the path that had led him to those midnight sessions in the quantum mechanics lab. He told Dr. Chen about growing up in a working-class family in East Boston, about parents who valued education but couldn't afford to support him through college, about the part-time jobs that gradually consumed more and more of his time until academic performance suffered. He described the moment when he realized he would have to choose between staying in school and keeping a roof over his head. Dr. Chen listened without judgment, nodding occasionally as Marcus explained how he had continued studying physics on his own, checking out textbooks from public libraries, watching online lectures during breaks at work, scribbling equations on napkins during slow periods at the diner. His love for the subject had never diminished, despite the practical obstacles that prevented him from pursuing it formally. The unauthorized lab sessions had begun as a desperate attempt to access the resources he needed to continue his self-directed education. What impressed Dr. Chen most was not just Marcus's determination, but the sophistication of his self-taught understanding. Many students struggled with quantum mechanics even after formal instruction and extensive support. Marcus had mastered these concepts through pure intellectual curiosity and persistence, developing intuitions about quantum systems that some graduate students never acquired. His unconventional educational path had actually given him certain advantages, forcing him to truly understand concepts rather than simply memorizing formulas and procedures. Dr. Chen began outlining a timeline for Marcus's application to the Exceptional Scholar Initiative. The next deadline was in 3 weeks, which would require intensive preparation, but was certainly achievable given the strength of his existing work. She offered to serve not only as his faculty sponsor, but also as his informal advisor during the application process, helping him refine his research presentation and prepare for the committee interviews. The research presentation would be the centerpiece of his application, a 30-minute talk describing his work on quantum decoherence theory and its potential implications for the field. Marcus would need to demonstrate not only his technical understanding, but also his ability to communicate complex ideas clearly and persuasively. Dr. Chen suggested that they schedule regular meetings over the next 3 weeks to help him develop and polish his presentation. Marcus accepted her offer eagerly, though he privately worried about his ability to articulate his ideas in a formal academic setting. His understanding of quantum mechanics was largely intuitive, developed through years of solitary study and reflection. Translating that understanding into the precise language expected in academic presentations would require considerable effort and practice. Dr. Chen seemed to anticipate his concerns and assured him that his unconventional perspective was actually a strength rather than a weakness. She explained that academic physics sometimes suffered from insularity, with researchers becoming so immersed in established approaches that they missed opportunities for breakthrough insights. Marcus's outsider status had allowed him to approach quantum decoherence from fresh angles, unencumbered by the assumptions and biases that might limit more conventional thinkers. His midnight discoveries represented exactly the kind of innovative thinking that the field needed to advance. As their meeting drew to a close, Dr. Chen handed Marcus a key card that would provide legitimate access to the quantum mechanics lab. She explained that he could continue his research openly now, working during regular hours and collaborating with other members of her research group. The secrecy and anxiety that had characterized his previous lab sessions could finally be replaced with the open pursuit of knowledge that defined genuine academic inquiry. Marcus stared at the keycard, a small piece of plastic that represented a fundamental transformation in his relationship with the institution that had once rejected him. He thought about all the nights he had worried about being discovered, all the careful planning required to access the lab without authorization, all the fear that his passion for physics would forever remain a private pursuit without broader significance or recognition. Dr. Chen also provided Marcus with contact information for Dr. Sarah Kim, the program coordinator for the Exceptional Scholar Initiative. Dr. Kim would guide him through the administrative aspects of the application process, while Dr. Chen focused on the academic and research components. Having two faculty advocates would significantly strengthen his candidacy and provide multiple sources of support as he navigated the complex institutional procedures. That afternoon, Marcus called his supervisor at Sal's diner to request a reduction in his work schedule. He explained that he was pursuing an educational opportunity that required more time for study and preparation, though he didn't elaborate on the specific details. His supervisor, a practical man who valued reliable employees, was initially reluctant to accommodate the schedule change, but ultimately agreed to reduce Marcus's shifts from 6 days per week to 3. The reduction in income would create financial challenges, but Marcus calculated that he could survive on part-time wages for the 6 weeks required to complete the application process. If accepted into the Exceptional Scholar Initiative, the program's financial support would more than compensate for the temporary sacrifice. If rejected, he could resume his full work schedule and continue his self-directed studies, though the disappointment would be crushing. Marcus spent the rest of the day reviewing his research notes and beginning to organize them into a coherent presentation structure. His discoveries about quantum decoherence had emerged gradually over months of investigation, building upon each other in ways that seemed obvious in retrospect, but had required considerable intellectual effort to develop. Initially, communicating this journey of discovery to an academic committee would require careful attention to logical flow and clear exposition. That evening, Marcus returned to the quantum mechanics lab using his new key card rather than the security exploit he had relied upon for months. The experience felt surreal, walking openly through the building's main entrance, using elevators instead of stairwells, entering the lab without fear of discovery or consequences. Several graduate students were working at various stations, absorbed in their own research projects, but nodding politely as he passed. Marcus approached the blackboard where he had made his breakthrough discoveries about decoherence theory, the same surface where Dr. Chen had found him working just 24 hours earlier. The equations were still there, exactly as he had left them, but their meaning had expanded far beyond personal satisfaction to encompass genuine academic potential. He began working through his derivations again, this time thinking about how to present each step clearly to an audience of experts. As he worked, one of the graduate students approached him with curious interest. The student, who introduced himself as David Park, had noticed the equations on the blackboard and recognized their significance for current research problems his own advisor was investigating. David asked whether Marcus was working on decoherence theory as part of his thesis research, assuming that anyone with access to the lab must be an enrolled graduate student. Marcus hesitated before responding, uncertain how much to reveal about his unusual circumstances. He explained that he was working with Dr. Chen on quantum decoherence problems, but avoided mentioning his current non-student status or the Exceptional Scholar Initiative application. David seemed satisfied with this partial explanation and began discussing his own research on quantum entanglement, leading to an engaging conversation about the connections between their respective projects. The interaction with David provided Marcus with valuable practice communicating his ideas to another physicist, helping him identify which aspects of his work required further explanation and which points could be assumed as background knowledge. David's questions and comments also suggested new directions for investigation, potential extensions of his decoherence work that might strengthen his research presentation for the application committee. Over the following days, Marcus established a new routine that balanced his reduced work schedule at the diner with intensive preparation for the Exceptional Scholar Initiative application. His mornings were spent in the lab, developing and refining his research presentation with input from Dr. Chen and occasionally from other graduate students who became interested in his work. His afternoons were devoted to reading current literature on quantum decoherence, ensuring that his work was properly situated within the broader context of contemporary physics research. Dr. Chen proved to be an exceptional mentor, providing both technical guidance and emotional support as Marcus navigated the unfamiliar territory of formal academic applications. She helped him understand the expectations and conventions of academic presentations while encouraging him to maintain the fresh perspective that made his work distinctive. Her confidence in his abilities provided reassurance during moments when the magnitude of the opportunity felt overwhelming. The most challenging aspect of the application process was the personal statement, a document that required Marcus to articulate his intellectual journey and future research goals in ways that would resonate with academic reviewers. Writing about his circuitous path to physics, his struggles with financial constraints, and his passion for fundamental questions about reality proved more difficult than solving complex mathematical problems. Dr. Chen helped him find a narrative structure that presented his experiences as assets rather than deficits. As the application deadline approached, Marcus felt increasingly confident about his research presentation, but remained nervous about the interview component of the selection process. Dr. Chen arranged several practice sessions with faculty members from different departments, allowing him to experience the format and types of questions he might encounter. These practice interviews revealed both strengths and areas for improvement in his ability to think quickly about unfamiliar problems and defend his research choices under pressure. The final week before the application deadline was intense, with Marcus devoting nearly all his waking hours to polishing his presentation and preparing for various contingencies that might arise during the selection process. Dr. Chen's research group had essentially adopted him as an unofficial member, providing feedback on his work and moral support as he prepared for what everyone recognized as a pivotal moment in his academic trajectory. On the morning he submitted his application to the Exceptional Scholar Initiative, Marcus felt a complex mixture of pride, anxiety, and hope that he had rarely experienced in his life. The past 3 weeks had transformed not only his immediate prospects, but also his understanding of his own capabilities and potential contributions to physics research. Regardless of the committee's decision, He had proven to himself that his passion for the subject was matched by genuine ability to contribute new insights to the field. The committee notification arrived on a grey Tuesday morning in November, delivered through the university's internal mail system in an envelope that looked deceptively ordinary for something that would determine the trajectory of Marcus's life. He had been checking his email obsessively for 2 weeks since his interview, analyzing every interaction with the 5 faculty members who had questioned him for nearly 3 hours about quantum mechanics, mathematical methods, and his research vision. Dr. Chen found him in the lab, staring at the unopened envelope, his hands shaking slightly as he held the document that contained his future. She had received similar notifications over the years, watching promising students learn whether their academic dreams would become reality or remain perpetual aspirations. The weight of these moments never diminished, even for someone who had witnessed dozens of such pivotal decisions throughout her career. Marcus finally tore open the envelope with deliberate slowness, as if the careful motion might somehow influence the contents. The letter began with formal language about the competitive nature of the selection process and the high caliber of all applicants before delivering the news that would reshape everything he thought possible about his life. The exceptional scholar initiative had accepted him with full funding, beginning immediately in the spring semester. The acceptance letter detailed a comprehensive support package that exceeded even Dr. Chen's optimistic projections. Marcus would receive full tuition coverage, a research assistantship that provided both valuable experience and substantial income, access to specialized laboratory equipment, and mentorship from multiple faculty members across different departments. The program had recognized not only his technical abilities, but also his potential to contribute fresh perspectives to established research problems. Dr. Chen watched Marcus read through the letter twice, his expression cycling through disbelief, joy, and overwhelming gratitude. She remembered her own acceptance letter to graduate school decades earlier, the moment when years of uncertainty crystallized into a clear path forward. Marcus's journey had been far more circuitous than her own, marked by obstacles that would have deterred most people from pursuing advanced education, making his success all the more meaningful. The practical implications of his acceptance began settling in as Marcus processed the details of his new status at MIT. He would need to resign from Sal's diner, arrange for proper housing closer to campus, and begin the complex process of transitioning from self-directed study to formal academic collaboration. The financial security provided by the program would eliminate the constant stress about rent and basic necessities that had shadowed his every decision for years. Dr. Chen suggested they celebrate with coffee and begin discussing the research projects Marcus might join as part of his assistantship. Her own group was investigating quantum coherence in photosynthetic systems, but she encouraged him to explore opportunities across multiple departments to find the best match for his interests and skills. The beauty of the Exceptional Scholar Initiative was its flexibility, allowing students to craft interdisciplinary research programs that transcended traditional departmental boundaries. Over the following weeks, Marcus met with faculty members from theoretical physics, applied mathematics, and even computer science to discuss potential research collaborations. His work on quantum decoherence theory had attracted attention from researchers investigating quantum computing applications, where understanding decoherence mechanisms was crucial for developing more stable quantum processes. The breadth of interest in his ideas surprised him and reinforced Dr. Chen's conviction that his unconventional background was an asset rather than a limitation. The transition from dishwasher to graduate researcher required more than administrative paperwork and new identification cards. Marcus had to learn the unwritten rules of academic culture, the subtle protocols that governed interactions between students and faculty, the expectations for research presentations and collaborative work. Dr. Chen served as an informal guide through this complex social landscape, helping him navigate situations that felt foreign after years of working in restaurants and living on the margins of university life. His first formal research presentation to Dr. Chen's group revealed both his strengths and the areas where he needed development. His technical understanding was exceptional, but his communication style reflected his years of solitary study rather than collaborative academic work. The feedback was constructive and encouraging, with several group members offering specific suggestions for refining his presentation techniques and mathematical exposition. Marcus threw himself into the academic work with the intensity of someone who had waited years for the opportunity to pursue his true passion. He attended seminars across multiple departments, audited advanced courses to fill gaps in his formal education, and spent countless hours in the library catching up on literature he had been unable to access during his time outside the university. The luxury of having unlimited time for intellectual pursuits felt almost surreal after years of stolen moments between work shifts. The spring semester brought new challenges as Marcus enrolled in graduate courses alongside students who had followed traditional academic pathways. Some professors and fellow students were initially skeptical of his presence, wondering how someone without a completed undergraduate degree could succeed in advanced physics courses. Marcus addressed these doubts through consistent performance rather than explanations, earning respect through the quality of his work rather than his academic pedigree. His research project with Dr. Chen's group evolved rapidly as he brought fresh insights to problems the team had been investigating for months. His approach to quantum decoherence provided new analytical tools for understanding how biological systems maintained quantum coherence despite environmental interference. The work progressed so quickly that Dr. Chen suggested they begin preparing their findings for publication in a major physics journal. The prospect of publishing his first academic paper filled Marcus with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. He had read hundreds of research papers during his self-directed studies, analyzing the arguments and mathematical techniques that defined cutting-edge physics research. Contributing to this scholarly conversation represented the ultimate validation of his intellectual journey, proof that his midnight sessions in unauthorized laboratories had produced genuinely valuable insights. Writing the paper required a different set of skills than Marcus had developed through his independent research. Academic papers demanded precise language, exhaustive literature reviews, and careful attention to the conventions that allowed complex ideas to be communicated efficiently to expert audiences. Dr. Chen guided him through multiple drafts, helping him transform his intuitive understanding into the formal mathematical exposition required for peer review. The collaboration with Dr. Chen revealed new dimensions of academic work that Marcus had never experienced during his solitary studies. Research was not just about solving problems in isolation, but about building upon the work of others, engaging in ongoing conversations that spanned decades and involved researchers across multiple institutions. His contribution to quantum decoherence theory needed to be situated within this broader context to achieve maximum impact. As winter turned to spring, Marcus's integration into the academic community accelerated. He began attending conferences, where he could present his work to larger audiences and engage with researchers from other universities. These interactions provided valuable feedback on his research, while also expanding his professional network within the physics community. The confidence he gained from positive reception of his ideas encouraged him to pursue even more ambitious research questions. Dr. Chen nominated Marcus for several prestigious fellowships and awards reserved for exceptional graduate students. His unconventional background actually strengthened these applications, as selection committees were impressed by his determination to pursue physics despite significant obstacles. The recognition provided additional financial support and increased visibility within the academic community, opening doors to research opportunities he had never imagined possible. The transformation in Marcus's daily life was dramatic. Instead of rushing between work shifts and stolen study sessions, he could dedicate himself entirely to research and coursework. The chronic stress about financial survival that had shaped his decisions for years gradually faded, replaced by the intellectual excitement of tackling fundamental questions about the nature of reality. For the first time since leaving MIT as an undergraduate, he felt like he belonged in academic spaces. His relationship with other graduate students evolved as they recognized his expertise and unique perspective on quantum mechanics. The initial skepticism about his non-traditional background gave way to respect for his insights and collaborative spirit. Marcus found himself becoming a resource for fellow students struggling with quantum theory concepts, his ability to explain complex ideas in intuitive terms, making him an effective informal tutor. The research paper with Dr. Chen progressed through the peer review process with encouraging feedback from expert referees. The reviewers praised the originality of Marcus's approach to quantum decoherence and its potential applications to biological quantum phenomena. Minor revisions were requested, but the overall reception suggested that the work would be accepted for publication in one of the field's most prestigious journals. Marcus began developing independent research projects that extended beyond his initial collaboration with Dr. Chen. His growing confidence in academic environments allowed him to pursue more ambitious questions about the fundamental nature of quantum systems. He proposed investigating quantum decoherence in neural networks, a project that could bridge theoretical physics and neuroscience in ways that might illuminate the physical basis of consciousness. The faculty members who had initially questioned his presence in graduate courses became some of his strongest advocates as his academic performance consistently exceeded expectations. Professor Martinez, who taught the advanced quantum field theory course, invited Marcus to serve as a teaching assistant for the undergraduate quantum mechanics sequence. The opportunity to teach represented another milestone in his academic integration, allowing him to share his passion for physics with students who reminded him of his younger self. Marcus's teaching style reflected his own journey of discovery, emphasizing intuitive understanding over formal manipulation and encouraging students to develop their own perspectives on quantum phenomena. His ability to connect with students who struggled with abstract concepts made him an effective educator, earning positive evaluations and requests to continue teaching in subsequent semesters. The success of his first research paper led to invitations to speak at physics colloquia at other universities. These presentations provided platforms for sharing his work with broader audiences while also establishing his reputation as an emerging researcher in quantum theory. The positive reception of his talks reinforced his growing confidence as a contributing member of the physics community. As his first year in the Exceptional Scholar Initiative drew to a close, Marcus reflected on the dramatic transformation in his circumstances and prospects. The terrified young man who had been discovered working illegally in a laboratory had become a confident researcher, making genuine contributions to theoretical physics. The journey had required not only intellectual growth, but also personal development as he learned to navigate academic culture and build professional relationships. Dr. Chen observed Marcus's evolution with satisfaction, knowing that her decision to advocate for his admission had been vindicated by his subsequent achievements. His success demonstrated the value of looking beyond traditional credentials to identify genuine intellectual potential, a lesson that would influence her approach to mentoring future students. Marcus had proven that brilliance could emerge from unexpected circumstances, and that institutional barriers often excluded precisely the kinds of innovative thinkers that academia needed most. The foundation had been laid for Marcus to continue advancing in his academic career, but he also began thinking about how to use his position to help other talented individuals who face similar obstacles to accessing higher education. His experience had shown him both the arbitrary nature of many institutional barriers and the transformative power of finding advocates who recognized potential despite unconventional circumstances. Marcus started volunteering with local community organizations that provided tutoring and educational support to underserved populations. His ability to explain complex scientific concepts in accessible terms made him an effective volunteer, while his personal story provided inspiration for students who doubted their own academic potential. These activities represented the beginning of a commitment to expanding access to scientific education that would define much of his later career. The year concluded with Marcus receiving notification that his research paper had been accepted for publication, marking his official entry into the scholarly literature of theoretical physics. The acceptance letter arrived exactly 1 year after Dr. Chen had discovered him working secretly in her laboratory, a coincidence that seemed to underscore the dramatic transformation that had occurred in his life. From invisible dropout to published researcher in 12 months represented a journey that would have seemed impossible just 1 year earlier. The letter from Princeton arrived on a warm September morning, bearing the university's distinctive seal and Dr. Rachel Hoffman's personal signature. Inside was an offer that would have changed Marcus's life trajectory in ways he had never contemplated possible. The Institute for Advanced Study wanted him to join their theoretical physics program as a junior fellow, a position that came with complete research freedom, no teaching responsibilities, and the opportunity to work alongside some of the most brilliant minds in contemporary physics. Dr. Hoffman had attended Marcus's presentation at the International Conference on Quantum Information Processing in Montreal, where his work on decoherence patterns in biological quantum systems had generated considerable excitement among theoretical physicists. His research had evolved far beyond his initial insights into quantum decoherence theory, expanding into investigations of quantum coherence in neural networks that bridged physics and neuroscience in unprecedented ways. The Princeton Fellowship represented everything Marcus had once dreamed about during those lonely nights washing dishes at Sal's diner. Complete intellectual freedom, unlimited resources, collaboration with Nobel laureates and Fields Medal winners, and the prestige that came with association with one of the world's most elite research institutions. The financial compensation alone exceeded anything he had imagined possible for someone who had been living paycheck to paycheck just 3 years earlier. Marcus stared at the offer letter for hours, reading through the details of laboratory access, research budgets, and international travel allowances that seemed almost surreal in their generosity. The position would begin the following fall, giving him nearly a year to complete his current projects at MIT and prepare for the transition to Princeton. Dr. Chen had encouraged him to apply when the opportunity first arose, recognizing that his talents deserved the kind of platform that only institutions like Princeton could provide. Yet as Marcus contemplated accepting the fellowship, he found himself thinking not about the prestigious laboratories and famous colleagues awaiting him at Princeton, but about the weekly tutoring sessions he'd been conducting in East Boston. Every Thursday evening, he met with high school students from low-income families who were struggling with mathematics and science courses. Young people whose circumstances reminded him of his own journey toward academic achievement. The tutoring program had begun informally, when Marcus volunteered to help Maria Santos, a 17-year-old whose mother worked as a custodian at MIT. Maria possessed exceptional mathematical intuition, but lacked access to the kind of advanced instruction that could nurture her talents. Marcus had started meeting with her in the community center near her apartment, working through calculus problems and physics concepts that her underfunded high school couldn't adequately address. Word of Marcus's tutoring had spread through the neighborhood, and soon he was working with nearly 20 students whose academic potential was constrained by limited resources and institutional barriers. These young people reminded him of himself. At their age, bright and curious but lacking advocates who could help them navigate the complex pathways to higher education. Their struggles with accessing quality education resonated deeply with his own experiences of exclusion and invisibility. The Princeton offer forced Marcus to confront a fundamental question about the purpose of his academic success. He could pursue the fellowship and likely achieve international recognition for his research contributions, potentially making discoveries that advanced human understanding of quantum mechanics and consciousness. Alternatively, he could remain at MIT and continue building programs that created opportunities for students who faced the same obstacles he had once encountered. Marcus scheduled a meeting with Dr. Chen to discuss the Princeton opportunity and his growing uncertainty about accepting it. He explained his conflicted feelings about leaving the community work that had become increasingly central to his sense of purpose as a physicist. Dr. Chen listened thoughtfully, recognizing that Marcus was grappling with questions that went far beyond career advancement to touch on fundamental issues of responsibility and impact. Dr. Chen shared her own experiences with similar choices throughout her academic career. Moments when personal advancement conflicted with broader commitments to education and social justice. She had learned that the most fulfilling careers often involved finding ways to pursue excellence while also creating opportunities for others to succeed. Marcus's dilemma reflected his evolution from someone focused purely on personal achievement to someone considering how his talents could serve larger purposes. The conversation with Dr. Chen clarified Marcus's thinking about the Princeton offer and his long-term goals as a physicist. While the fellowship represented an incredible opportunity for personal advancement, he had begun to envision a different kind of career that combined cutting-edge research with direct efforts to expand access to scientific education. The students he was tutoring in East Boston needed advocates who understood both the barriers they faced and the potential solutions that institutional change could provide. Marcus began exploring alternative approaches to his career development that could satisfy both his research ambitions and his growing commitment to educational equity. MIT's newly established Center for Educational Innovation was developing programs designed to identify and nurture scientific talent in underserved communities, precisely the kind of work that aligned with his evolving interests and values. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the director of the Center for Educational Innovation, had been following Marcus's work with community tutoring programs and invited him to discuss potential collaboration opportunities. The center was preparing to launch a comprehensive initiative aimed at creating pathways for talented students from low-income backgrounds to access advanced scientific education, and Marcus's unique perspective could contribute valuable insights to program development. The meeting with Dr. Walsh revealed possibilities that Marcus had not previously considered. The center was planning to establish satellite programs in communities throughout the Boston metropolitan area, providing advanced mathematics and science instruction to students whose schools lacked adequate resources. These programs would be staffed by graduate students and faculty members who could serve as mentors, while also conducting research on effective pedagogical approaches for underserved populations. Marcus saw immediate connections between this work and his own research interests in quantum information processing and neural networks. Understanding how the brain processes complex information could inform the development of more effective teaching methods for abstract scientific concepts. The intersection of cognitive science and physics education represented a research frontier that could generate both theoretical insights and practical applications for improving science education. The center offered Marcus a position as research coordinator for the Community Outreach Initiative, a role that would allow him to continue his theoretical physics research while also leading efforts to expand scientific education access. The position came with competitive compensation, research, support, and the opportunity to build programs that could serve as models for similar efforts at other universities. Marcus realized that declining the Princeton Fellowship in favor of the MIT position represented a choice to define success differently than the traditional academic career path suggested. Instead of pursuing individual recognition at an elite institution, he would be choosing to build something new that combined research excellence with direct social impact. The decision felt aligned with the values that had sustained him through years of struggle and uncertainty. The students in his Thursday evening tutoring sessions became inadvertent advisors as Marcus considered his decision about Princeton. Their enthusiasm for learning despite limited resources, their determination to succeed despite systemic obstacles, and their gratitude for mentorship reminded him of the transformative power of having advocates who recognize potential in unexpected places. Dr. Chen had served that role for him, and he could provide similar support for the next generation of talented students facing barriers to advancement. Marcus drafted his response to Princeton with careful consideration for the gravity of declining such a prestigious opportunity. He expressed genuine appreciation for the offer, while explaining that his current work at MIT aligned more closely with his long-term goals of combining research with efforts to expand educational access. The letter was professional and gracious, leaving open possibilities for future collaboration, while clearly communicating his commitment to the path he had chosen. Dr. Hoffman's response to Marcus's declination was both understanding and encouraging. She had observed throughout her career that the most impactful scientists often made unconventional choices about how to deploy their talents, and she recognized that Marcus's decision reflected maturity and vision rather than lack of ambition. She invited him to maintain connections with Princeton researchers and suggested potential collaboration opportunities that could support his work at MIT. The announcement of Marcus's appointment as research coordinator for the Center for Educational Innovation generated excitement throughout the MIT community and beyond. His story of transformation from dropout to successful researcher resonated with faculty members and students who recognized the importance of creating more inclusive pathways to scientific careers. The appointment represented institutional commitment to addressing systemic barriers that excluded talented individuals from academic opportunities. Marcus's first major project in his new role involved establishing partnerships with community organizations throughout Greater Boston to identify students who could benefit from advanced scientific mentorship. The program aimed to reach beyond traditional academic pipelines to find young people whose potential might otherwise go unrecognized due to limited resources or institutional barriers. The selection process for the community science program reflected Marcus's understanding of how talent could be overlooked by conventional assessment methods. Rather than relying solely on grades or standardized test scores, the program evaluated students based on curiosity, persistence, and innovative thinking demonstrated through project-based assessments. The approach was designed to identify students, like Marcus himself had been, individuals with exceptional ability who lacked access to traditional indicators of academic achievement. The first cohort of community science scholars included 15 students from diverse backgrounds who shared common characteristics of intellectual curiosity and determination, despite facing various obstacles to educational advancement. Marcus worked with each student individually to develop learning plans that address their specific interests and goals, while also providing foundation skills necessary for advanced scientific study. The program's pedagogical approach drew upon Marcus's research into how the brain processes complex information, incorporating insights from cognitive science to make abstract scientific concepts more accessible to students from varied educational backgrounds. The methods proved remarkably effective, with students demonstrating rapid progress in mathematics and physics, understanding that exceeded expectations based on their previous academic performance. Marcus's dual role as researcher and educator created synergies that enhanced both aspects of his work. His interactions with community science scholars provided insights into effective teaching methods that informed his theoretical research, while his academic work generated new approaches to science education that could be tested and refined through direct application with students. The success of the community science program attracted attention from educational researchers and policymakers interested in replicating the model at other institutions. Marcus began receiving invitations to speak at conferences about educational innovation, sharing his insights about identifying and nurturing scientific talent in underserved communities. These presentations helped establish his reputation as a thought leader in both theoretical physics and science education. Collaboration opportunities emerged with researchers at other universities who were investigating similar questions about educational equity and access to scientific careers. Marcus found himself at the center of a growing network of academics committed to addressing systemic barriers that limited participation in science and engineering fields. The collaborative work expanded his research impact, while also building institutional support for educational innovation initiatives. The integration of his research and educational work created a career path that felt both intellectually satisfying and personally meaningful to Marcus. He had found a way to pursue cutting-edge scientific research while also addressing the social justice concerns that had become central to his identity as a physicist. The combination represented a synthesis of his technical abilities and lived experiences that generated unique contributions to both theoretical physics and educational practice. As the community science program completed its first year, the results exceeded all projections for student achievement and engagement. Every participant had improved their mathematics and science performance significantly, with several earning scholarships to attend four-year universities and pursue scientific careers. The success provided compelling evidence that talent existed widely, but required appropriate support and recognition to flourish. Marcus began documenting the program's methods and outcomes for publication in educational research journals, contributing to scholarly understanding of effective approaches for expanding access to scientific education. The research generated interest from funding agencies and foundations interested in supporting similar initiatives at other institutions, creating opportunities for program expansion and replication. The decision to decline Princeton in favor of building something new at MIT had led to opportunities and impact that Marcus could not have anticipated when he first considered the fellowship offer. His career had developed in directions that satisfied both his intellectual ambitions and his commitment to social justice, demonstrating that unconventional paths could lead to exceptional outcomes for individuals willing to define success on their own terms. Marcus's work had created ripple effects that extended far beyond his immediate research and teaching responsibilities. Former participants in the community science program began mentoring younger students, creating sustainable cycles of support that could continue growing without his direct involvement. The model of combining research excellence with community engagement was being adopted by other faculty members who recognized its potential for generating both scientific insights and social impact. The transformation in Marcus's career from aspiring physicist to established researcher and educational innovator reflected broader changes in how universities were beginning to understand their responsibilities to the communities they served. His success had helped demonstrate that academic excellence and social justice could be mutually reinforcing rather than competing priorities, encouraging institutional support for faculty members who chose to pursue similar integrated approaches to their careers. The notification came through the university's internal system on a rain-soaked Thursday in October, 5 years after Marcus had first been discovered working in the quantum mechanics lab. Dr. Andrew Mitchell, dean of the graduate school, had scheduled an emergency meeting with Marcus and Dr. Chen for the following morning. The message provided no context beyond the urgency marker and a request that Marcus bring comprehensive documentation of his research portfolio and community program achievements. Marcus spent the night reviewing files and preparing materials, uncertain whether the meeting represented recognition or investigation. His community science program had grown exponentially, now serving over 300 students across 12 neighborhoods in Greater Boston. The success had attracted national attention, including a feature article in Scientific American that highlighted his unconventional approach to combining theoretical physics research with grassroots educational initiatives. Dr. Chen arrived at the dean's office ahead of schedule, her expression unreadable as she greeted Marcus in the hallway outside. She had received her own cryptic summons and suspected the meeting related to external pressures the university was facing regarding the community science program's rapid expansion and resource allocation. Conservative members of the Board of Trustees had raised questions about whether MIT's mission should include extensive community outreach, rather than focusing exclusively on elite academic research. Dean Mitchell's office overlooked the Charles River, its windows offering views of Boston's skyline that seemed to symbolize the bridge between academic institution and surrounding community that Marcus's work had strengthened. The dean was a pragmatic administrator who had supported innovative programs throughout his tenure, but he also faced constant pressure to maintain MIT's reputation for academic excellence while managing limited resources and competing institutional priorities. The meeting began with Dean Mitchell acknowledging Marcus's exceptional contributions to both theoretical physics research and educational innovation over the past 5 years. His quantum coherence research had generated 12 peer-reviewed publications in top-tier journals, while his community science program had become a national model for university community partnerships. The combination of research excellence and social impact had enhanced MIT's reputation in ways that traditional academic metrics couldn't fully capture. However, Dean Mitchell explained, the program's success had created unexpected challenges that required immediate attention. The community science initiative had grown beyond the capacity of existing institutional structures to support effectively, creating strain on facilities, faculty time, and administrative resources. Several department heads had expressed concerns about the program's impact on traditional graduate education and research productivity. More significantly, the program had attracted scrutiny from federal funding agencies and private foundations who questioned whether resources designated for advanced scientific research should be redirected toward community education initiatives. The National Science Foundation had requested detailed accounting of how grant funds were being allocated between Marcus's theoretical research and his educational programs, raising questions about compliance with funding guidelines that required clear separation between research and outreach activities. Marcus listened to these concerns with growing unease, recognizing that his efforts to integrate research and community engagement had created administrative complexities that threatened the sustainability of both endeavors. The institutional support that had enabled his unconventional career path was being challenged by external pressures and internal resistance from faculty members who preferred traditional academic structures. Dr. Chen spoke carefully about the broader implications of these challenges for MIT's commitment to educational innovation and social responsibility. The community science program had demonstrated that universities could serve both academic excellence and social justice simultaneously. But sustaining such programs required institutional courage and creative approaches to resource allocation that went beyond conventional academic models. Dean Mitchell presented 3 options for resolving the current situation. Marcus could discontinue the community science program and focus exclusively on his theoretical physics research, ensuring compliance with funding guidelines while eliminating administrative complications. Alternatively, he could transfer the program to an external non-profit organization, maintaining his involvement while removing institutional liability and resource strain from MIT. The third option represented the most ambitious and risky approach. MIT could formally establish a new institute for community science that would legitimize and expand Marcus's work while creating sustainable funding mechanisms and administrative structures. This approach would require approval from the board of trustees, significant fundraising efforts, and coordination with multiple academic departments to ensure integration with existing programs. Marcus found himself facing a decision that would determine not only his own career trajectory, but also the future of educational initiatives that had transformed hundreds of lives over the past 5 years. The students he had mentored were now attending universities across the country, pursuing careers in science and engineering that would have been impossible without the support and recognition they had received through the community science program. The weight of this responsibility pressed heavily on Marcus as he considered the implications of each option. Discontinuing the program would represent a betrayal of the students who depended on the support and opportunities it provided, while transferring it to external management might compromise the academic rigor and institutional credibility that made it effective. The third option offered the possibility of permanence and expansion, but carried significant risks for his own position and MIT's reputation. Dr. Chen advocated strongly for the institute model, arguing that Marcus's work had proven the value of integrated approaches to research and education that could serve as a national model for university-community partnerships. The timing was particularly favorable, given increased attention to issues of educational equity and social justice in higher education, creating opportunities for foundation support and federal funding that could sustain the program long-term. Marcus requested time to consider the options and consult with stakeholders in the community science program before making his decision. He scheduled meetings with current participants, their families, and community organizations that had partnered with the initiative to understand their perspectives on the proposed changes and their preferences for the program's future development. The conversations with community members revealed the profound impact the program had achieved beyond simple academic improvement. Parents described how their children had gained confidence and ambition that extended far beyond science courses. developing leadership skills and college aspirations that transformed entire family expectations about educational achievement. Community leaders emphasized how the program had created positive relationships between MIT and neighborhoods that had historically felt excluded from academic institutions. Maria Santos, now a sophomore at Stanford University studying theoretical physics, returned to Boston specifically to participate in discussions about the program's future. She had become the first person in her family to attend college and credited the community science program with providing both the academic preparation and institutional connections necessary for her success. Her story exemplified the transformative potential that Marcus's work had unlocked for students whose talents might otherwise have remained unrecognized. The community meetings revealed unanimous support for establishing the Institute for Community Science, despite acknowledgement of the risks and challenges such an approach would entail. Participants understood that the Institute model offered the best possibility for sustaining and expanding the program's impact while maintaining the academic rigor and institutional support that made it effective. Marcus also consulted with researchers at other universities who had attempted similar integrated approaches to combining scientific research with community engagement. These conversations provided insights into successful models and common pitfalls that could inform MIT's approach to establishing the Institute. Several universities expressed interest in collaborating on research and program development if MIT proceeded with the Institute proposal. The decision crystallized for Marcus during a late-night conversation with David Park, his former lab mate who had become a close friend and collaborator over the years. David pointed out that Marcus had consistently chosen paths that prioritized impact over conventional measures of success, from declining Princeton to building the community science program. The Institute proposal represented a continuation of this pattern, an opportunity to institutionalize innovative approaches that could influence academic culture beyond MIT. Marcus scheduled a follow-up meeting with Dean Mitchell to announce his decision in favor of pursuing the Institute model. He presented a comprehensive proposal that addressed the administrative and funding concerns that had prompted the original meeting, while outlining a vision for sustainable growth that could serve as a national model for university community partnerships. The proposal included detailed budget projections, fundraising strategies, and administrative structures that would integrate the Institute with existing MIT programs while maintaining operational independence. Marcus had identified potential funding sources including federal agencies, private foundations, and corporate sponsors who were interested in supporting innovative approaches to science education and community engagement. Dean Mitchell received the proposal with cautious optimism, recognizing both its potential for enhancing MIT's reputation and the significant challenges it would face during the approval process. The Board of Trustees would require convincing that the Institute aligned with MIT's mission and could achieve financial sustainability without compromising existing programs or institutional priorities. The proposal process required Marcus to develop skills in institutional politics and strategic communication that he had never needed during his years as a researcher and educator. He learned to present his vision in terms that resonated with different stakeholder groups, emphasizing research opportunities for faculty concerned about academic credibility while highlighting community impact for trustees interested in social responsibility. Dr. Chen served as a crucial advocate throughout the approval process, leveraging her relationships with senior faculty and administrators to build support for the Institute proposal. Her reputation for academic excellence and institutional service provided credibility that helped overcome skepticism from colleagues who questioned whether community engagement belonged within MIT's mission. The fundraising component of the proposal proved surprisingly successful, with several major foundations expressing immediate interest in supporting the Institute as a pilot program for innovative approaches to educational equity. The preliminary funding commitments provided evidence of external validation that strengthened the proposal's credibility with internal decision-makers. The Board of Trustees review process extended over several months, involving detailed scrutiny of every aspect of the proposal, from academic justification to financial projections. Marcus presented to multiple committees, answering questions that ranged from theoretical physics research to community development strategies, demonstrating the breadth of expertise he had developed through his unconventional career path. The final board meeting, where the Institute proposal was considered, took place on a snowy February morning, with Marcus waiting in an adjacent conference room while trustees deliberated his future and the future of the community science program. Dr. Chen joined him during the wait, sharing stories about her own experiences with institutional change and the patience required for academic bureaucracy to embrace innovation. The approval came with conditions that reflected the trustees' cautious approach to institutional change. The Institute for Community Science would be established as a 5-year pilot program with annual reviews and specific performance metrics related to both research productivity and community impact. Continued funding would depend on meeting targets for student achievement, faculty publications, and external fundraising that demonstrated the Institute's value to MIT's mission. Marcus accepted these conditions enthusiastically, understanding that the pilot status provided an opportunity to prove the Institute's worth while building institutional support for permanent establishment. The 5-year timeline was sufficient to demonstrate long-term impact while providing accountability measures that addressed trustee concerns about resource allocation and mission alignment. The announcement of the Institute for Community Science generated national attention from academic institutions, educational researchers, and community organizations interested in replicating the model. Marcus found himself invited to conferences and consultations across the country, sharing insights about effective approaches to university-community partnerships and integrated research education programs. The Institute's establishment required recruiting additional faculty and staff who shared Marcus's vision for combining research excellence with community engagement. The hiring process attracted exceptional candidates who were excited about the opportunity to pursue academic careers that integrated social justice concerns with scientific research, creating a team that brought diverse expertise and perspectives to the Institute's work. The physical space for the Institute was located in a renovated building that bridged the MIT campus and surrounding community, symbolizing the program's mission to connect academic resources with community needs. The facility included research, laboratories, classroom spaces, and community meeting areas designed to facilitate collaboration between university researchers and neighborhood residents. The Institute's research agenda expanded beyond Marcus's original focus on quantum coherence and physics education to include investigations of effective pedagogical approaches, community development strategies, and policy interventions that could improve educational equity. The interdisciplinary approach attracted collaborators from psychology, sociology, economics, and public policy who brought complementary expertise to the Institute's mission. Community science programs expanded to include new neighborhoods and age groups, serving elementary students through adult learners who had been excluded from traditional educational pathways. The diversity of participants created opportunities for research on learning differences and pedagogical innovations that could inform educational practice beyond the Institute's direct programming. Marcus's role evolved from hands-on educator and researcher to institutional leader responsible for strategic planning, fundraising, and external relations. The transition required developing new skills while maintaining connections to the research and teaching that had originally motivated his career choices. He continued working directly with students while also managing the administrative responsibilities that enabled program expansion. The Institute's success in its first 3 years exceeded all projections for both community impact and research. Productivity. Student achievement metrics showed consistent improvement across all demographic groups, while faculty publications and grant funding demonstrated the academic credibility of integrated research education approaches. The combination of social impact and scholarly excellence provided compelling evidence for the Institute's value to MIT's mission. National recognition of the Institute's work led to invitations for Marcus to testify before congressional committees, considering education policy, serve on federal advisory panels, reviewing science education initiatives, and consult with other universities developing similar programs. His influence extended far beyond MIT to shape national conversations about educational equity and university social responsibility. The fifth-year review process that would determine the Institute's permanent status approached with confidence, based on documented achievements and external validation. Community partners, student participants, and academic collaborators provided testimonials about the Institute's impact that demonstrated both local effectiveness and national significance. The review committee's report recommended not only permanent establishment of the Institute for Community Science, but also expansion of its model to other academic departments interested in developing community engagement components for their research and education programs. The recommendation reflected recognition that Marcus's vision had proven both practically effective and academically credible. The permanent establishment of the Institute represented vindication of Marcus's unconventional career choices and his belief that academic excellence and social justice could be mutually reinforcing. The recognition also validated Dr. Chen's early support for his potential and her advocacy for inclusive approaches to identifying and nurturing scientific talent. Marcus was offered the opportunity to direct similar institute development at other prestigious universities, but he chose to remain at MIT to continue building the program he had created and to mentor the next generation of researcher educators interested in integrated approaches to academic careers. His decision reflected the same priorities that had led him to decline Princeton years earlier. The Institute's influence on MIT's culture extended beyond its direct programming to encourage other faculty members to incorporate community engagement into their research and teaching. The success had demonstrated that social responsibility could enhance rather than compromise academic excellence, creating institutional support for innovative approaches to university-community partnerships. Marcus's personal story became a symbol of the transformative potential of educational opportunity and institutional innovation. Speaking engagements and media interviews provided platforms for advocating policy changes that could create more pathways for talented individuals, from underserved communities to access higher education and pursue scientific careers. The Community Science Program's alumni network grew to include hundreds of former participants who were pursuing careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics across the country. Many returned as volunteers and mentors, creating sustainable cycles of support that ensured the program's continued impact beyond any individual leader's involvement. Research emerging from the Institute contributed to scholarly understanding of effective educational practices, while also informing policy debates about resource allocation and institutional priorities in higher education. The combination of practical application and theoretical investigation created synergies that enhanced both community impact and academic contribution. Marcus's marriage to Dr. Lisa Chen, a cognitive scientist who had joined the Institute as a research faculty member, represented both personal happiness and professional collaboration. Their shared commitment to educational equity and research excellence created a partnership that strengthened both their individual contributions and their joint impact on the Institute's mission. The birth of their daughter, Sophia, added new dimensions to Marcus's understanding of educational opportunity and parental responsibility. He wanted to ensure that she would grow up in a world where talent was recognized and nurtured regardless of family background or economic circumstances, making his work feel even more personally meaningful. The Institute's 10th anniversary celebration brought together hundreds of students, families, faculty members, and community partners to recognize the program's achievements and plan for future expansion. The event demonstrated the broad coalition of support that had developed around the Institute's mission and its potential for continued growth and influence. Marcus's keynote address at the anniversary celebration reflected on the journey from his discovery in the quantum mechanics lab to the establishment of a nationally recognized program that had transformed educational opportunities for thousands of students. He credited Dr. Chen's early recognition of his potential and the countless individuals who had contributed to the Institute's success. The speech also looked forward to challenges and opportunities that would shape the Institute's next decade, including plans for national expansion, international collaborations, and policy initiatives that could scale successful approaches to educational equity. Marcus expressed confidence that the Institute's model could continue evolving to meet changing community needs while maintaining its core commitment to combining research excellence with social justice. The anniversary celebration concluded with the announcement of a major federal grant that would support replication of the Institute's model at 50 universities across the country. The grant represented recognition of the Institute's national significance and provided resources for Marcus to lead a consortium of institutions committed to developing innovative approaches to university-community partnerships. As Marcus stood before the assembled crowd of students, families, and colleagues who had shaped his journey, he reflected on the unexpected path that had led from midnight discoveries to institutional transformation. The terrified young man who had been caught working illegally in a laboratory had become a national leader in educational innovation. But the core values that motivated his work remained unchanged. The evening ended with Marcus returning to the laboratory where Dr. Chen had first discovered him working on quantum decoherence problems 15 years earlier. The space had been preserved as part of the Institute's historical collection, a reminder of how individual recognition could catalyze broader institutional change when combined with vision, persistence, and collaborative support. Standing in the quiet laboratory, Marcus wrote a final equation on the blackboard, not a solution to a physics problem, but a representation of the transformation equation that had shaped his life and career. The formula captured the relationship between individual potential, institutional support, and social impact that had enabled his journey from invisible dropout to recognized leader. The equation remained on the blackboard as a symbol for future students who might discover their own potential in unexpected places and find advocates willing to recognize their talents despite unconventional circumstances. Marcus's story had demonstrated that brilliance could emerge from anywhere, and that institutional courage could create opportunities for transformative change. The legacy of Marcus's work extended far beyond any individual achievement to encompass a new understanding of how universities could serve both academic excellence and social justice. The Institute for Community Science had proven that these goals were not competing priorities, but complementary aspects of institutional mission that could enhance each other when pursued with vision and commitment. Years later, as Marcus approached retirement from his position as institute director, he could point to thousands of students who had accessed scientific careers through programs he had created, dozens of universities that had replicated his model and policy changes that had expanded educational opportunities for underserved communities across the country. The transformation from midnight discovery to national influence represented more than personal success. It embodied proof that talent existed widely but required recognition and support to flourish. Marcus's story inspired countless individuals to pursue their own unconventional paths, while also encouraging institutions to look beyond traditional criteria in identifying and nurturing human potential. The quantum mechanics laboratory, where everything began, remained active as both research facility and historical landmark, a place where new discoveries continued while also serving as a reminder that the most important breakthroughs often occurred when individual brilliance met institutional courage and social vision. The space symbolized the ongoing possibility that tomorrow's leaders might emerge from today's overlooked corners. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.